In this lesson, we'll use paste new to create a unique copy. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to use paste new, practice component color cycling, and use remove. Let's carry on with the file from our previous lesson and continue to work inside of our derived assembly. I do want to note that if we export a derived assembly, we'll be creating an F3Z file, which is another version of a Fusion archive file. However, this will maintain a derived assembly relationship and export the derived assembly in the main assembly. But there are some limitations. If we start to create multiple derived assemblies based on the top level generative motorcycle assembly file, then we might start to lose some of the references. Because of this, we're not going to be providing a derived assembly file and the top level file. You'll need to follow along creating your own derived assembly file and follow along the process that we're going through here. In this lesson, we're going to be focusing on a tool called Paste New. Now we can copy bodies and components inside of Fusion 360 and we can paste them. When we paste them, we'll be making a second version of it. When we use paste, the second version is linked to the original, which means that changes to either of them will propagate through both. If we use paste new, however, we'll break that link and we'll be starting with a copy of that geometry. Because our file already contained a component called Generative Swing Arm Parts, this has our chain blocks and sliders in it. Now if we want to create some geometry based on these, but we don't want to modify the originals for some reason, then we might want to do a copy and paste new. And again, this will break the original link, but if we are trying to make some copies or some geometry that's based on these, then this might be a good option. We also might want to come in and we might want to hide some of this other information, such as these planes. When we select them on the screen, you'll notice that it highlights the component which is contained in. This is inside of the rear rim, and if we expand this, it's inside of this construction folder. So by simply selecting it on the screen, it helped us find where it was inside of our browser, so we could easily go in and hide it. Now the next thing that we want to do is create a copy of the generative swing arm parts and do a paste new. To do this, I'm going to start by right-clicking and selecting copy. Then I'm going to left-click. Then I'm going to left-click to select the top level assembly. Then I'm going to right-click and use the paste new option. Paste new makes a new component called generative swing arm parts. You'll notice that there is a parentheses 1. Now we also have the option to do move copy and capture the position if we change where it is. But we're going to say OK to leave it in the same location, then hide the original. So now we have a copy. You can see that both of these move around. I'm going to revert the position, and I actually want to turn on component color cycling so that I can get a good idea of the differentiation between all of our components. So now we have our copy of the generative swing arm parts. I also want to right-click and ground these so that they don't move, they stay in their same location. But let's take a look at what happens when we make edits. So in the axle blocks component, we're going to activate it. We're going to navigate in here and notice that the axle block itself contains two bodies. The bodies inside of the axle block, the two unique bodies, are going to be body 1 and body 2, and then they're mirrored to the other side. Now again, when we create this derived version of our assembly, we don't get all those features. We have to go back to the original to make changes. And the copy and paste new is going to break that link. But we have everything that we need from here. And ultimately, we don't really need these smaller parts in order to define a generative study. So body 2 as well as body 3 can go away. So we're going to select both of those by holding down the control key. We're going to right click and we're going to use remove. Remove is a feature that gets added to the timeline but does not break any other links, rules, sketches, or features that were created previously. Because it is an item in the timeline at a specific point in the design, we can use remove rather than delete without having to worry about breaking any additional references. So now that we're left with just this block here, I'm going to use some of my direct editing tools in the next lesson to manipulate this geometry. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and activate the top level. Then we're going to expand the hidden generative swing arm parts, expand the axle blocks, and expand the bodies folder. And note that we still have all 4 bodies contained within this version. So if we turn it on, you can see that those bodies are still there. Because we don't necessarily need the generative swing arm parts anymore, the originals anyways, we can also right-click and we can use the option to get rid of this, to get it out of our file. But notice that when we do this, there's no remove option. Remove option is not available for this part. If we go to the axle block component and we right-click, notice again that there is no remove option inside of here. If we go down to the bodies and we try to select them, you can see again there is no remove option in here. Now this is important because these are derived components. The components came directly from the original assembly. So we can't treat them exactly like we did the originals because of this reference. So that reference is restricting us from removing them from this file. However, we can still hide and show them as needed, and obviously we can make copies. And using the copy and paste new will break the link between the original and give us free rein to modify that geometry. At this point, let's navigate back to a right view, let's fit to screen, and let's save our file so we can move on to the next step.